Hi guys, welcome back. This is Namrata Apte, the Legal Faculty of Career Launcher. And once again, I'm going to share a video with you. And in this video, I would like to talk about just CLAT in general. So those of you who don't know what CLAT stands for, it is basically Common Law Admission Test. So today's video is going to be all about understanding the basics of CLAT, what kind of an exam this is, for what kind of colleges, what it takes to prepare for this exam, what are the subjects that you have to prepare for. This is what I'm going to be covering in today's video. So I hope you like this information and it's beneficial to you. So let's begin. Basically, let's start with CLAT pattern. So as I said, CLAT is common law admission test. So this exam is conducted once a year for 22-23 national law universities, barring Delhi National Law University, because that university conducts its own exam called ALET. So CLAT is for all the universities like NLSIU Bangalore, Nalsar Hyderabad, NUJS Kolkata, NLU Shimla, GNLU, HNLU, you name it, and all those national universities basically accept CLAT score to give admission to its students. Now, this exam has been conducted since 2008. The pattern has changed over and over again. The recent change happened the first change happened in the year 2020, which is relevant even now, when they basically reduced the number of questions and converted the pattern into a passage-oriented pattern. Basically, that time in 2020, they reduced the number of questions from 200 to 150. And recently, this number has been reduced further to 120. So what you guys see in front of you is the current pattern that they have been adhering to. So which basically this pattern was used just last year only, like this year, and these students will basically go to college after their boards this year. So this was conducted in December 2023 for the CLAT for the batch of 2024. Now in this new pattern of CLAT, the subjects remain the same. The first one is English aptitude, which has around 22 to 26 questions. For each question, it's 1 mark. All right. The weightage in overall pattern is 20%. The second section is current affairs. It used to be general knowledge / current affairs, but in recent times, they have solely focused, or they claim to solely focus on current affairs. However, there you will still find some questions of static GK as well, but primary focus will still remain on current affairs. The third section is legal aptitude, which again is very passage oriented now, and so there will be close to 28 to 32 questions, 1 mark each, and it has 25% weightage. Fourth one is logical reasoning, which is more about critical thinking. Basically, it's again very close to your reading comprehension in English, where you have to read a passage, make certain deductions and answer the questions accordingly. This again has 22 to 26 questions and the weightage is 20%. And the last section is quantitative aptitude, which is maths. These days, CLAT maths is kind of focused on data interpretation only. And basically, they give you information like graphs and graphs and charts, etc. You have to read that information. You have to again use formulas and techniques to come up with the right answer. The number of questions will vary between 10 to 14 marks. 10 to 14 questions. Each will obviously again have weightage of 1 mark each, and it will carry overall weightage of 10% in the larger scheme of things. Basically, the total number of questions will be 120. Why I say that they vary from time to time? Why I say that they vary from time to time? Because the number of questions is not set. Okay, so it can be anywhere in this range. So this is the broad spectrum. This is the broad pattern of CLAT. Now, we will start off with English. So what I'm going to be dealing with today is that what do you need to study for CLAT? How do you sort of prepare for this exam? Okay, so we are going to start with English. In this section, you will be provided with passages with about 450 words per passage. Okay, and these passages can be from anywhere. Okay, they can take articles from editorials. They can take articles from Economic Times, Hindu, Telegraph, etc. They can also at times take passages from, fictional books or even non-fictional writing. They also can take and it will also The topics will also vary, okay? It can be on economics, it can be on philosophy, it can be on science, it can be on literature. There is no guarantee where they will take it from. So, you have to be prepared and you should be comfortable with each and every genre of these passages, basically. Now, to solve these passages, okay, first of all, you need to have great reading speed. You need to have good comprehension and language skills. So even if they don't directly ask you vocabulary questions or grammar questions, you should be good at that so that you can actually understand the passage easily. And you don't have to waste a lot of time just trying to figure out what is it that the author is trying to say. So your reading comprehension has to be your main focus in the time that you're preparing for CLAT. You have to make it a habit to read newspapers every day. When I talk about newspapers, I'm talking about newspapers like maybe the Hindu or the Economic Times or Indian Express. And you have to read the whole thing. You have to read the national news, the international news, the editorial, financial news, everything. Not for just GK purposes, but you need to read that because this is the best way of practicing reading comprehension. And editorials really help you develop your critical thinking skills as well. It helps you learn how to derive inferences from the passages, how to basically derive data from the passages. To hone these skills, this is not something you can develop overnight. This is something which will develop over a period of time. So your focus has to be to read as much as possible on a daily basis. Okay. Now, as I said, okay, like in CLAT these days, they only ask reading comprehension questions. They don't ask grammar questions or direct vocabulary questions, but having good command over language is a very important thing. What kind of questions they might ask you, as you can see in front of you, they can ask you questions, where they're asking you to draw inferences from the passages and conclusions. They can ask you the main idea of the passage. They can ask you about the viewpoints of the author, that from what perspective is he or she writing something. They can ask you answers where you have to say what will strengthen the author's argument or what will weaken the author's argument. They can ask you the meaning of various words and phrases. So it can be a whole range of questions that they ask you. To practice that, the simple thing is to solve as many passages as possible in the time that you're preparing for CLAT exam. Now, the next section is current affairs. Okay. Here again, in CLAT, they will give you passages on current affairs as well. But to be honest, in most cases, you don't really need the passage because it's current affairs, it's GK. So if you know the answer, you don't really need to spend any time reading the passage. You can save that time and you can directly answer the question. But for full disclosure, in December 2023, the CLAT paper that was given, there was a lot of reading required for current affairs section because it wasn't exactly current affairs. It was like a couple, like one passage was about Jallianwala Bagh. So people could read the passage, derive the right answer, and answer the questions. Okay. Similarly, one passage was about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and his philosophy. So once again, it wasn't really, of course, current, right? It is more of static GK, and if you read the passage, you will get the answers. So there is no set way of going about it. You have to take that call in that moment. But having said that, what you need to do is before your CLAT exam, 7 to 8 months prior to your exam, you have to start memorizing the current affairs, not just national but international as well. So you should be aware of if any war is going on, if any conflict is going on, like Russia, Ukraine, whatever is happening in Israel, or you should know about summits like G20 summit, or you should know about the elections in 2024. We are going to have elections in 2024. US is going to have fresh elections and many other such countries, right? So you have to be aware about all of these aspects. Students should also be aware about the sports news. They should be aware about important awards, like who won the national award, who is basically participating in what. So you have to be aware about all of these things. Now, obviously, you cannot just read it once and hope to remember it. So the key to prepare for current affairs is that you have to revise it over and over again. All right. How do you prepare for it? Obviously, the old school way is read the newspapers. But other than that, get one solid material. Like, for instance, our students, they refer to these PDFs called monthans, and they read them and, they get like a monthly update. So It's a very comprehensive compilation of whatever is happening in and around the world, and the students basically can directly refer to this PDF and revise it over and over again. So whoever you are, wherever you're preparing from, just find one source which you find reliable and keep on revising it. That's the only way to get through this section, because this section is very important. All right, because a lot of kids, they suffer in current affairs section. So if you are good at it, it gives you a natural edge over the other candidates. The next section is legal section. The legal section is again reading comprehension oriented. You will have passages of yet again, like words around 400 to 450 words. These passages can again be derived from editorials or legal articles from the newspaper, or they can just give you hardcore law from the theory books, basically. Okay, so your job is to read those passages and to understand what the lawyer is trying to talk about, what kind of law they are referring to. Sometimes the law would be stated very obviously, like section 300 of in some act basically says XYZ. So you have to directly apply that law on the factual situations which will be given to you after the passage, and think like a lawyer, think critically, and answer the question. Sometimes they might mention some landmark judgment, and they will talk about what the judges said, what was the position of law before that, what is the position after the judgment, and accordingly answer the questions. Okay, so if but it still basically most of the times boils down to finding the legal principle from this passage and applying it to the factual situation and coming up with the best possible answer. Again, for legal aptitude, the best way to prepare for it is solve as many questions as possible, right? This is again not something that you can just practice overnight. You have to basically inculcate a habit of thinking in a particular manner. Like people who do well in legal aptitude, few things that they remember is that they always stick to the principle which is in front of them, which they derived from the passage. They basically do not use external knowledge. They do not use emotions while coming up with an answer, and they think rationally all throughout. So these are some tips that you have to remember. How you can solve it is, again, you get books in the market where you will get passages. You can basically go through those books. You can solve those passages. One very important part of preparation is to, solve all the previous year papers. Other than GK, I think that is a solid practice for all the sections of CLAT, because GK, of course, becomes outdated. So that will not be as relevant. But for legal aptitude, English, maths, logic, it's always very healthy practice to solve all the previous year papers, irrespective of the paper pattern. Okay, so you should all basically definitely do that without fail, because they also tend to repeat questions very often. Okay, so it will be a waste of resources to not basically do that. All right. Now, the next section is logical reasoning. Earlier, it used to be a mix of analytical reasoning and verbal logic, but these days, CLAT is solely focused on the critical thinking part. Once again, the pattern goes the same. There's a passage of about 450 words, and then you will have to basically solve questions like you have to recognize an argument. You again have to find conclusion. You have to read and identify the argument set out in the passage. You have to basically think of the rationale behind a particular sentence or the paragraph. Okay, you have to make certain deductions. You have to draw some analogies of, identify the contradiction, the tone, arguments, etc. Okay, so for this, again, if you have a teacher who can teach you the basics of logical reasoning, it will be a great start. And then once again, get a book, get any kind of online resource or an offline resource, and start practicing. The last section is maths. Maths is usually basically still like basic 10th level maths. And as I mentioned earlier, this CLAT maths is now primarily focused on data analysis or data interpretation. All right. So you will have this section will include basically two sets usually it has. Okay. And they will give you some facts and propositions and representations of numerical information, followed by various questions. Okay, you have to derive that information from the passage and answer the questions accordingly. You will have to use basic, till 10 standard level mathematical operations such as information, such as ratios, proportions, basic algebra, mensuration, and statistical estimation. Now, a lot of kids have an inherent fear of maths. So the key to this is, don't please push it till the end that I will deal with it later on. Start practicing maths. Start owning your skills in maths from the very beginning. Get it out of your way so that you will be in a comfortable position and you will not panic just before the exam. Remember one thing, kids. A very important part of doing well in CLAT is to also strategize properly, to understand your weaknesses, to understand your strengths, and then work on them accordingly. Also, a lot of people make this mistake of thinking that maths will be an optional thing. If we will have time left in those 2 hours, we will solve maths. That is a wrong approach. That is a very disastrous approach. Okay. As I said earlier, that current affairs is a very important section. Of course, others are as well, but current affairs, the other one is maths. These two sections tend to make the maximum difference in kids' performance in the final exam. Okay. Because when it comes to English, logic, and legal, I think more or less every good kid is at par on that. But the two sections which tend to make the most difference are these two. So please don't ignore them. Please work on them very rigorously. See, if you're already good in English or you're already good in legal and you keep on doing it over and over again because it's making you feel good, that will be a very momentary happiness because it's not doing any value addition to your performance, right? So while yes, it does make you feel happy, keep it on the side and tackle the difficulties first. So start with maths, okay? Get it out of the way, then focus on other things, and eventually you'll have to focus a lot more on current affairs for the simple reason that the volume is so much that you can't just do it in a couple of hours. You have to dedicate 4 to 5 hours to GK alone every day towards the end. So please, keep these small tips in mind, right? Like give equal attention to every section. Don't think that maths is only for 10 to 14 marks, so it's any less important. Remember one thing, even 1 mark makes a lot of difference. From 1 mark from NLSIU, you go to NALSA. From NALSA, you go to NUJS. From NUJS, you go to Jodhpur, to GNLU. So, it's a slippery slope essentially. So don't take such chances. Focus on current affairs 7 to 8 months prior to CLAT exam. And, logical reasoning. See, yes, it's good if you're thinking, but it's also very important to keep track and if is your thinking is in the right direction or not, right? So talk to your teachers, clear your doubts. Don't try to change the paper. Like some people, some kids they get frustrated with it that why is it this way? But there's nothing we can do about the paper, right? So what we can adjust is our way of approaching the question paper. So please work on that. I hope you found this information useful. If you guys want some other videos about it, we will definitely help you guys out with it. You want any kind of information, do reach out to us and I will make more videos and I will post them online very soon. Thank you so much.